And good morning. We are live on YouTube, but we want to be live on Facebook and YouTube as well. So we're going to bring in Atlanta Falcons fans on All Falcons and Scott Kennedy Sports, a writer page I've had for, 10 years or so. And Nick, I wasn't sure what happened because Nick went super
Oh my
right
gosh.
on that
Hi.
one. No, Nick is joining us from the sun.
We'll
Good
turn it
morning,
down.
everyone. This is the Falcons Podcast. I am Scott Kennedy, your host. I am in Atlanta. That is Nick Kendall over here, who's joining us from the surface of the sun. If you're listening to this afterwards, Nick's having a little trouble with his white balance on his video. We do stream these live every Monday and Wednesday morning at 9 a.m. So we like to get the fan interaction as well as what we do on the podcast afterwards. So we are live, and there's some live technical difficulties sometimes that crop up. But I think it makes for an interesting, and we love the interaction with the fans. So hop in, give us a like, and as you see right there, right off the bat, kicking us off in the red and black, we want to say thank you to Michael Ranquillo, benefactor of the show, honorary Falcons Brotherhood, coming in with a bright red $100 super chat to get us going. Again, Michael, it's because of people like you that allow us to do things like this. It's just, I kind of say it beats working for a living because this is something we really enjoy doing. And honestly, if it weren't for people like you, we couldn't do it. So Thank you so much. And you're always your generosity, no matter where Nick and I are, whether it's here, whether it's on Broncos, whether we're doing Falcons, whether we're doing all NFL, you're always here for us. And if there's anything we can ever do for you, you let us know. We want to be here for you too. So thank you so much. Yeah. Nick, do you have anything you want to say to Michael before we say hello to some folks in the chat?
I mean, what can you even say? He's consistently coming in and supporting us and helping us out and making these shows exist. I mean, you Falcons fans should be thanking him as well, coming in as a Bronco fan doing that. So shout out to Michael.
Yep. Thank you, sir, over there in Arizona, Tucson, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. Tucson, Arizona. Sounds right. So he's up bright and early on these. And Victor Bellatti's coming in. He says, good morning. I'm here faster than Michael Ranquillo today. That's something new. Yeah, but Michael came in swinging. So he was first. And Big Al says, let's go. He says, I've been looking forward to this show ever since the trade hit the news yesterday. Yeah, I almost went on and did a quick, and I might start doing this. Let me get some feedback from y'all. I might start doing some quick hitters into the podcast. One way to do that is leave a review and say, yeah, we'd love to see more. We'd love to hear more quick hitters. Just do a 10-minute gut reaction. Doesn't have to be a full 30-minute, 60-minute show, but want to start doing some more audio along those lines too. Kevin, he's on YouTube. He wanted to come in early for the chat. He's going to hop over to Facebook, and he went over to YouTube, and he dropped a like on the way out too. So be like Kevin. Drop a like and a share if you can. If you found us on Twitter, hit that retweet. But Victor says, with the addition of Jeff Okudah, great trade, by the way, and we'll get into that one. My top guy at cornerback now in the draft is Julius Brents. I know you're a big fan of Brents and have been from the get-go, Nick.
I mean, I've been a big fan of Brents since he was a freshman, to be honest. One of the first games I remember him was back in maybe it was 2019 against Michigan, and I went out there, I'm like, oh my God, who the hell is this slender man out there? I said yesterday, like he could scratch the top of his feet without having to bend his waist at all. Really long player, very physical. Also, I can say that I have good information that he's a great kid as well, which doesn't hurt by any means. Transferred from Iowa, broke my heart a little bit, ended up at Kansas State. Really good athlete, maybe not a tremendous long speed, but with the size, the length, and the suddenness that he possesses is going to be a very interesting player. I am curious about him. His ball skills, a lot of times he will play the player versus the ball, and he needs to turn around and make some plays on the football with his size. He's in good position. Just trust your technique. It's one of those things. But he's a really unique player. I'm curious to see where he goes, given his unique profile and testing, and also the fact that this is a crazy deep cornerback class. I mean, you don't have to take one early. I think like the top, 12 guys in this class are all ones that, like, I think in a typical year you would go probably top 50, top 60, and you're going to see some of these guys fall to probably 70. So go ahead.
Go ahead. I thought you were finished. Didn't mean to interrupt. But when you start seeing 6'2", 34-inch arm, Darius Rush, 4'3", 640, locked down at the Senior Bowl in the 80s and third round, it's a deep class. He's someone I think you could take in the second and be very happy with. And I won't be totally surprised if that's what actually happens come draft day. If someone says, you know what, hey, here's a 6'2" corner with 4.3 speed. And we watch him in all the drills and do the one-on-ones and everything at the Senior Bowl. Why are we going to let this guy go by us? You're not. You're just not. So Brent's, Darius Rush, some guys that I'm definitely looking out for. 100 Realist says, good morning, guys. Ready for an always great stream this morning. That's so much pressure. Putting so much pressure on us. We'll do what we can here. And Joe Cannon says, great morning, Scott and Nick. To you as well, my friend. He says, I feel Jeff Okudah could be a sneaky pickup for us. I don't know how sneaky it is, just because the draft pedigree he has, being a former number 3 overall pick. He hasn't made news based on his playmaking. He's made news because of his lack of playmaking. So there will still be a lot of eyeballs on him. And we'll break all that down as we get into the draft a little bit too. Ryan Adonis just cannot stand Christian Gonzalez. It's almost personal for this guy at this point. Ryan's all over it. I think if Ryan's not a Georgia fan, then he definitely watched the Georgia game against Oregon, and Georgia made Oregon look awful, just up and down awful. And that left a big impression on some people. It's kind of like you trying to talk to me about Bo Nix. I watched Bo Nix at Auburn for a couple of years. He was just in so far over his head, so much pressure. It's like, okay, fresh start, Oregon offense. Yeah, let's come back to Georgia and play the exact same way. Get your butt kicked and look bad doing it. So I get it. There's no such thing as unbiased. Those are the kind of things that influence how we think. That's what a bias is. And a game like Georgia against Oregon will bias you for sure, will influence you.
But then you had Georgia in the championship game. We might need to toss out anybody that Georgia played for the most part, except for...
And that's what I say.
Yeah. That's Alabama and Ohio State and Georgia. Put them in a box. They are their own programs now.
It's a team game. It's like, oh, he didn't do anything against Alabama's defense. Who does? He couldn't cover. So he couldn't cover Julio. Patrick Peterson couldn't cover Julio. Julio Jones put a 300 burger up on Patrick Peterson after Peterson was running his mouth. I'll still take Patrick Peterson.
Yeah.
But I don't know that it's completely done. I'll tell you why when we get into it here in just a little bit. That corner's completely off the board. I don't think it's completely off the board. I think it's sliding that direction, but maybe not completely yet.
And I will say Christian Gonzalez, there is some movement towards him going 6 overall to the Lions as well. So he maybe was bye-bye anyway. He might not even ever have been an option for the Falcons at 8. So he's still considered a pretty highly thought of prospect.
Yeah, and Brandon Swank comes in. He says, good morning, guys. Does trading for Jeff, does that change who we pick in the draft, Brandon? That's a good question. It could. It might not, but it's going to have an influence for sure. It may not change. It doesn't take corner completely off the board. We might as well get into that right now. And why not? Let's look at the Falcons secondary right now. AJ Terrell, he's entering his 4th year. We'll get his 5th year option picked up, and we'll probably get a new contract. The Falcons and Arthur Blank are very good about paying their guys. This isn't if you're my age and you grew up with Rankin Smith, AJ Terrell's gone. He's Deion Sanders. He plays out his time and he's gone. The free agents leave. The Arthur Blank will invest into this team. That's never been the problem. The problem has been who's spending the money. So you got AJ Terrell. You got Casey Hayward. Casey's old. He's on his last legs. Mike Hughes is a bit of a journeyman. Okay, he's a good player and he's an upgrade, but he's a bit of a journeyman. And to this point, let's go ahead and use the B word. Jeffrey Okudah has been a bust. Okay, now for a 5th rounder, that's a hell of a deal. A low risk, high reward option, but he's on a 1-year deal too. So right now, I named 4 guys. I got AJ Terrell. That's it, really, for the long term. So if I see a corner that I absolutely love at number 8, he's still in play.
Yeah, I think it just lowers the probability a little bit. And what's going to be really interesting here, we're talking draft, of course, but bringing it back to AJ Terrell and Jeff Okudah, same draft class, I believe, both 1st rounders. Are you going to exercise the 5th-year option on both of them, paying both of them, 11, 12 million next year? Do you approach Terrell before that and get a contract done and then have Okudah play on that 5th-year option? Because that's coming around the corner. You're going to have to decide. Obviously, Terrell gets it, but Okudah as well. And you have to make that decision before you see how he plays. And I believe last year they changed the conditions on that, where it used to be the 5th year is only guaranteed for injury. Now I think it is completely guaranteed when you pick it up. So will be interesting to see if they do that with him. I mean, it's expensive for a player who's not been very good. He's definitely not worth it. I think if he's on the open market, you're talking about a guy getting 6-7 million probably for a 1-year deal, with incentives.
Just because we still see that potential in him that maybe. I don't think he's even in the 6-7 million range right now. I just don't think. I agree with you. And the thing is, you have to pick up his option by May 1st. So you'll come out of the draft and you'll have to pick up his 5th-year option. Right now, I don't think they will. I think they'll treat him like Caleb McGarry. And again, if he has a phenomenal season and you have to overpay him a little bit because you took that risk, that's a good thing. That's okay. It's like, oh, well, he was awesome for us, and now we had to pay him 15 instead of 11. Okay, so what? Yeah. I got 2 great corners. Now, do you extend AJ Terrell early? Probably not. Or you could extend him early but have it not take effect until 2044, just because his 5th-year option is going to be less than his next contract on an average per year. He's going to be a $20 million guy. There's a pretty good chance. And his 5th-year option is not going to be that high. It'll be in the teens.
He might be somebody, though, that wants it and deserves it before you get to that 5th-year option. So he might play a little bit of hardball next year. If I was his agent, I'd be telling him, like, listen, if you have one more good year, go get that money. Play that. A lot of players, once they get to that 5th-year option, it's like, I know you have control, but like, I've been putting my body out there, have some goodwill to the organization. Let's get this done right now.
No, I agree. And do it like Lindstrom, but his money won't kick in until next year. Lindstrom signed an extension. He's an Atlanta Falcon for 6 years, but he's playing on his 5th-year option, and then his extension kicks in. So I think that could absolutely happen with AJ Terrell. You don't necessarily want to tear it up and sign a new contract. You'll say, yeah, here's $80 million guaranteed across 5 years, starting in 2024.
Yeah.
Get your extension. You're still going to get all your money. You're just going to keep your costs down a little bit. And by the way, here's your signing bonus and all that kind of stuff. He's going to get his money for sure.
As he should.
As he should, for sure. Tyler Eccles coming in. He says, morning, fellas. Okudah is definitely better than any 5th-round corner, and with game experience. Anderson might fall. I say double down on edge. How about single down on edge? I think Okudah's got a chance to be a pretty good player again. To get him for a 5th-rounder and $5 million, the Lions were pretty happy to get that $5 million off the books. They're taking a $5 million cap hit. They have to pay his prorated signing bonus. The Falcons are picking up his base salary of $1 million plus his roster bonus, which is 5 and change. We just talked about the 5th-year option. I don't think so. I don't think they'll pick it up before he's ever played it down. It's about $12 million. I don't think they'll pick it up by May 1st. I think they'll let him play out the stretch, and if they have to overpay because he had a great year, so be it. But that's a risk well worth taking for a 5th-round pick. I agree with you, Tyler.
Yeah, and it really helps solidify one of the positions that we had questions marks on this Falcons team. And I'm going to be completely honest. I'm jealous covering the Broncos over here. We had a lot of fun in free agency too, but one of the big things, if you listen to any of our Broncos shows, I've been harping on is like that cornerback 2-3 spot right now is head scratcher. I mean, I have no idea what's going to happen out there. And Jeff Okudah for a 5th. I mean, that's a great deal. So that's this is also one of the benefits of being a team that you played kind of conservative the last couple seasons in your finances. And now you can take on, there's not a lot of teams that can take on Jeff Okudah in the contract for a 5th with the potential 5th-year option and everything like that. So,
well, and this is why you rip the Band-Aid off. We talked about, I honestly didn't think they would have the guts to take a $40 million and ended up being about $80 million in dead cap money. I didn't think they would do it. I'm like, we can't do that. They did. They bit the bullet. And we're playing with cast-offs from the Bears and Titans for the last 2 seasons, plus their draft picks, and still won 7 games. I mean, I think there was less than $100 million on the field by week 17 last year, on a $220 million salary cap, playing with 40% of a roster. I thought they did a great job. Now, it's a different challenge, Nick. And let's hit the second part of this question real quick. Will Anderson might fall down to number 8. That's possible. That's very possible, Nick. If there's a chance that quarterbacks go 4 in the top 7, and I think 3 is a lock. I really do. I think you go 1 and 2, which is Panthers, Texans. 4 is Colts. 5, 6, 7. You need one of those to take whoever's left over. And if that happens, there's 4 pretty well premier considered position players, and Will Anderson, Tyree Wilson, Christian Gonzalez, and Jalen Carter. If 4 quarterbacks go, one of those 4 is available at 8. One of them.
Yeah. And I will say,
I'll take one of those guys.
There is some buzz of late, and everyone eye roll. It's draft season buzz, blah, 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 how much of this actually is true. But some talk that if Bryce Young goes 1 overall, the Houston Texans might go Will Anderson at 2 because their next quarterback might be Will Levis on their board. And they think they might be able to get Will Levis closer to 12 versus having to take him at 2. We know that D'Amico has that Alabama.
They can't do that. Then swap with the Colts.
They might do that, but it's D'Amico Ryan, the Alabama connection, taking the best positional player on their board in the draft at a premier position still. I think it is over the last 48 hours, there's at least been some talk of that. Now, can I say pissing? Is it a pissing contest between them and Carolina for Bryce Young? Because obviously Houston, it seems pretty obvious that Houston has Bryce Young number 1, maybe. But I don't, it seems like at least it was worth noting that over the last 24, 48 hours, there's been some talk that if Bryce Young goes 1, that Houston isn't for sure going quarterback.
Yeah.
Which would be crazy.
I don't know what they'd have to gain by that. I think I feel pretty good in saying they're going quarterback at 2. We'll see. We will see. It'd still be a surprise. Even if they talk it up that it could happen, anything could happen.
Yeah.
It'd still be a surprise. They got Vontae Mack, no matter what, written in at number 1. That would be a surprise. Chris Walker coming in on Facebook. Good morning, Chris. He says, "Morning, guys. Kind of excited about the Okudah trade. A lot of potential for a surprisingly low cost." Yeah, and what's interesting is the 5th round pick that they sent to the Lions. You know where that came from, Nick? Calvin Ridley. That was the first part of the Calvin Ridley trade. So you've got a player who really talented, showed some flashes, especially 1 year, and then just didn't work out that you send away to the Jacksonville Jaguars. And you got a number 3 overall, uber talented, hasn't worked out that you get in return. So in a sense, you're trading Calvin Ridley for Jeff Okudah, and you still get that conditional pick. So the better Ridley plays for the Jaguars, I think you can end up, I think the highest you can go is a 3rd. I'm not positive on that. Maybe a 2nd, but you're still going to get another pick out of it. So Calvin Ridley in a 3rd, Calvin Ridley for Jeff Okudah in a 3rd. Okay, that's pretty good dealing. Plus, you get out from under that 5th-year option that Ridley was going to have, and you save about $12 million.
Yeah, I think the way the Ridley deal is there's like a contract extension being part of the comp or the potential pick as well.
There's 3 in there. It's if he makes the team, if he makes the roster, plays in the first game as the second one, elevates it to a 4th, and then if he signs a contract extension, elevates it to a 3rd. Is somewhere there's 3 check marks in there where it can go. It's a 5th if he's even on the team. I forgot what the second barrier is for 4th, and the contract extension is for a 3rd.
Which would be, that's a good contract. I wish more teams did the conditional trades. I think they protect yourself. I'd like to see a little bit more movement around. Why not more conditional picks? I don't understand. But we got Millie Mills coming in saying, "Hey, my guys, good morning, y'all. I'm finally up in time to catch y'all live." What's your time zone, Millie Mills? Because I'm over here live at 6 a.m. So let's
not everybody's early birds at me. And Millie Mills is, calling me at midnight saying, "Dude, we're just getting started. Where are you?" I'm like, "But hey, I'm just waking up to pee. I've been asleep for 2 hours." So not everybody's, I was talking with Aaron Freeman, Locked On. I did a show with him yesterday, and he did this show before. And he's in East Coast, and I'm like, "Yeah, sorry to wake you up at that ungodly hour of 8:30." But some people work till 2, 3 in the morning,
Yeah.
Not this guy. I'm asleep by 11 usually.
Yep.
So welcome. Good to see you, Millie Mills. And hit the comments too. We're always in on there if you don't catch us live. But he's saying Cam Smith in the second round, so cornerback. Am I nuts in liking Darius Rush a little better than Cam Smith?
He's more physically gifted. He's bigger. Cam Smith is a little bit more drew a lot more tougher assignments at South Carolina, and I think has more ball skills and more tenacity. I mean, he's definitely him and Devin Smith. Man, if you put those two on a discourse or something, they're total great trash talkers. But Cam Smith is a good player. I didn't like it when they were talking about him being one of the first cornerbacks taken, but now he's fallen to the second. I think that's good value overall. I think I wouldn't fault you for liking Darius Rushmore. He's bigger, he's faster, he's longer. But Cam Smith, mid to late second, I think is probably where he's going to end up going.
And here's what's interesting to me, y'all, and I don't remember who was it? Was it Tyler Eccles? Yeah, Tyler saying, Anderson and double down on edge. And when he says double down, they used a big pick on Arnold Ebiketie last year, a high second round, and then they went with D'Angelo Malone in the third. So going edge, yes, they still need an edge. But every time I do these mock drafts for the Falcons, I still like edges in the second as well. I get Tyree Wilson, and I'm like, oh, well, there's B.J. Ojulari. Well, take him too. You need pass rush. You don't have what did the Eagles have? 75 sacks last year?
Something unbelievable. And they're too deep. Their second line was as good as a lot of teams' first line.
I think the Falcons had 42 in the last 2 years combined. I think they went from 18 to 24. I don't think it was 21. I think they went from 18 to 24. 42. They had about half the sacks in the last 2 years combined that the Eagles had last year. Now, the Eagles had a historical run last year, but still 50 sacks is good, but you should be able to expect that. More pass rush. Cam Smith in the second, I'd be okay with that. I'd be looking for Darius Rush too, his teammate, someone else in there. And Joe asks, could there be a chance we trade back now and pick up more draft picks in the mid rounds? Sure.
Yeah,
absolutely. I am getting to this point now, Nick, though, where it is becoming quality over quantity. As far as this team goes. Now, you get as many good players as you can, but the Falcons aren't bereft of talent anymore. They're not, 2 years ago when we're doing the show, we're looking at this roster and we're saying there's like 5 NFL guys on the starting 22, maybe 5. Now you look at it, where are your big holes? Drew Dahlman at center was a guy I was looking at, and I think starting with the Chicago Bears game, he turned the corner. He started playing at an NFL level. So across the line, you're okay. Left tackle, you're all right. Left guard is a question mark. Center, you're okay. Right guard, strength. Right tackle, strength. Running back, you're good. Quarterback is still a question mark, but you're going in there. You're not going to answer that. That one's going to be answered internally. Wide receiver is a big question mark. You look at the depth chart at wide receiver. Let me read this out to you. And you say, starting 3, Drake London, Mac Hollins, Scotty Miller.
You'd love to have a better number 2. Yeah, you'd love to have a better number 2 out there. That's a question mark. I mean, you're at a point where you're just looking to add talent. You mentioned running back is good. Running back is good, but let's say you absolutely adore somebody round 3 in this class. Fine, take the swing. Let's say we had talked about earlier trading back. Let's say you trade back to 20 and Bijan Robinson is still there. I think at pick 20, you start to at least consider that. 8 overall, miss me with that. But I think 20 overall, especially with the additional capital, that's something at least you should ponder because of what he brings just to like the dump off game too, right? He takes negative plays and can turn them into explosives. You mentioned also you're at a point where you're looking quality over quantity. Now you can start investing, as I like to call it. So let's say you trade back. You don't need more picks this year, but hey, we'll give you a 2024 third if you move back from 8 to 14 and a 7th rounder this year as well. Like, I can get a top 100 pick next year. That's a potential developmental starter. And then I'll have more picks next year. Then you have more also capital. If let's say Desmond Ridder doesn't work out, you can be more aggressive in the quarterback trade market. So you can situate yourself now. If you believe, and I agree with you, that the roster is at a point where you don't have to go quantity, you can get future picks with that plus interest, what you get for trading for future capital.
It all depends on what's available. The past couple of years, I've said trade down, trade down, trade down, trade down. This team needed so many players at basically across the board. But now, for the most part, you're okay. You're starting 22 is okay. You're looking at depth. Now I want to get the best possible players I can instead of the most good players I can. I want the best players I can get. I'd rather have one elite player than two good ones right now. I've got good players. On paper, it's a totally different dynamic when you think about all the players that have been brought in. These are, and like we said, instead of shopping off the waiver wire of the Bears and Titans like they have the last 2 seasons, they're actually shopping with money. Hey, you've got a former number 3 overall pick that isn't working out for you. You want to save $5 million? Well, we've got $5 million to take that risk. You couldn't do that the last 2 years. No way. You just flat out couldn't. You're signing Eric Harris at safety instead of Jesse Bates. You're making those moves, and it's been fun. So, could you trade back? Yes, the Falcons could trade back, but it's not something that I would push for nearly as hard as I have in the last 2 seasons, the last 2 years. Yeah, trade back to 13 and get Lucas Van Ness and another second-round pick. Yeah, sounds good to me.
Yep. Nolan Smith, one of those offensive linemen, maybe then wide receiver comes into play if you trade back to 15, and Jackson Smith and Jigba, who the Falcons, I believe, had in for a visit as well. So it's you can go so many ways. The draft is really fun when you have no obvious holes, and things could be spicy as well. We've been talking about trading back. I like Desmond Ridder. Don't get me wrong, but I would be shocked if the Falcons weren't at least approaching the Cardinals saying, hey, what would it take to move up to 3? Because if you don't know for sure you have your quarterback, you at least have to be considering the possibilities. And I'm considering Jeremy, if he's going to pressure us into another mock today, saying, good to see you, Jeremy Sean. He says, morning, boys. Hope you're doing well, Jeremy. Always appreciate you coming in and supporting us and providing some good insight in the comment section.
Yeah, Jeremy, good morning. And Ryan comes in with a good comment here. He says, the thing that bothers me about Lions fans is they call Okudah a bust, but all of last year, the Lions trusted Okudah to cover the other team's best wide receiver every game. A bust is relative to where you were selected, and he was a number 3 overall in a good draft. Bruce Pickens was a bust, biggest draft bust in Falcons history, and I actually have a video explaining why. Okudah has been a bust relative to being a number 3 overall pick. For a number 5 pick, could be a bargain. And the reason why is because you're the Lions and you're sitting here looking at the 2020 draft, okay? Number 1, Joe Burrow. Number 2, Chase Young. Number 3, Jeff Okudah. Number 4, Andrew Thomas. Number 5, Tua Tagovailoa. Number 6, Justin Herbert. Number 7, Derek Brown. You throw those 7 in a hat and draw one. The one you want to get the least is probably Jeff Okudah. And that's where that comes from, because he can still be. Another part of it, he hasn't been healthy. He's only played in half the games. So considering you've gotten a very small return on a number 3 investment, the B word for the Detroit Lions is applicable. Falcons don't care. They're sending him a 5th-round pick. That could be a bargain. Has he played well enough for a 5th rounder? Yeah, he has. Yeah, he has. Okay. Well, let's see what we can get out of him. And maybe he can turn into that number 3 form and really be a benefit. It's a low risk, high reward move for the Atlanta Falcons.
Yeah, without a doubt. It'll be really interesting to see how he plays this year, how he works. I mean, are we sleeping on Casey Hayward? Are we just penciling in Jeff Okudah? They're going to have to battle, I think, out there as well. How does the slot work out for them? They brought in also Mike Hilton, who's done some good work in the slot. So I really like the depth. Mike Hughes, excuse me.
Yep.
Mike Hughes, another former. Was Hilton the 1st-round pick? Actually, I don't know. But Kevin Fitzpatrick coming in saying, well, I don't agree with it. Skoronski makes some sense. As Nick says, turn a power into a superpower. Scott says that. I've just been saying, why not turn it into something that is matchup proof? And he says, by the way, I remember his grandfather playing. Yes, I'm that old. Kevin, you don't look old, so that's what counts. But Skoronski, Skoronski and Paris Johnson Jr., I think that if you want to, you're talking about the Eagles model earlier. Let's flip it to the other side of the ball. You have a day 2 pick at quarterback that you're not sure about. Why not make it as, matchup proof and excuse proof as possible out there to get the best evaluation you can? Peter Skoronski or Paris Johnson Jr., both have guard ability. Paris Johnson Jr. played there 2 years ago, and Peter Skronsky projects probably best at guard or center. And then you give yourself a day one avenue for them to play, and also long-term avenue if they want to replace Jake Matthews, if you want to shake up that room, change the contract. If he's not, if
getting
you're
older,
playing,
just flat out time is going to catch up with him too. He's been there a while.
Yep. So paying a average player premium money, he plays a premium position. Maybe he's slightly above average. He's been okay there, but that's definitely an avenue that I don't think is out of the question as well. And again, bringing it back to the Eagles and the Lions, honestly, their offense last year, the defense was horrible, but the offense, they were matchup proof. They could go in every single week and do whatever they wanted from a scheme perspective because they knew every single week they were going to win the offensive line battle up front. And that makes things so easy for the quarterback and the offensive play caller.
Last year, I like to say that at some point in every game, Arthur Smith reaches the F it. We're just going to run the GD ball down their throats part of the game. Okay. Mm-hmm. This makes that even more possible. And one of the reasons why that it's like, well, you were 7-10 last year. Well, one of the reasons why that didn't work as effectively as it could have is because your defense was so bad.
Yeah.
Well, you've put a ton of resources into the defense and you're probably not done. Mm-hmm. You know, I said that before this trade because of what's coming up in the draft. I still feel like number 8 is going to go towards a defensive player, and he'll probably come in as a starter. Again, when I'm looking at the depth chart and I see, you know, Taquan Graham as a backup defensive lineman now, I'm like, oh yeah, this is going to be a lot more fun. You know, Taquan Graham was really, really good. Assuming he comes back healthy, he was good last year. But I look over there and I see Lorenzo Carter. I'm like, okay, they can do better than that. You know, Lorenzo is a good situational player, and that's how he's paid. That's how they got him. Good rotational guy. I like him on the team. I want better than that as a starter. I think you can do better than that as a starter in the draft. But we will see. We will see. So, but, you know, I like the 49ers model too. Another one of those teams that is not quarterback dependent. They're building a strong enough team that it's not dependent on a $50 million quarterback that you can't afford, because then your team stinks anyway, because you can't afford it because you put all your money into a quarterback.
Yeah, that 49ers model has been defensive line up front. Every single pick has been like defensive line, which is not a bad way to go. I think that's a smart decision.
Trenches.
Yes.
Yep. Yeah. So exactly. One of those front five, they've done an amazing job of rebuilding, retooling the back 4 or 5, depending on if you want to call the nickel. You know, consider, you know, Cornell Armstrong was a starter at the end of last year. He probably won't even make the team this year. No. It's, you know, Isaiah Oliver, I think it was a good player. Didn't quite get the best out of him last year. You may have an upgrade there if you drop Casey Hayward into the slot now. You know, maybe he's down a step, but he can use his experience and savvy and to anticipate a little bit more, which is worth more than a step in a 40-yard dash. Chris says maybe a change of scenery will do Okudah a lot of good. Having Terrell and Bates should help. Yeah, it can. It can, and that's what you're hoping for. You know, why hasn't it worked there? Injuries is a big part of it. You know, injuries is part of that as well. And I say this with affection when, you know, I cut on the Detroit Lions, having grown up in Atlanta, because I sympathize. I get it. It's hard to judge a player when they're playing for a franchise that has had so little success. You know, I mean, they can still do really well, but, you know, they've had arguably 2 of the greatest players at their positions in the history of this game and never made a Super Bowl, in Calvin Johnson and Barry Sanders. And, you know, it's just tough. So a change of scenery. I like where Detroit's headed. I'm rooting for them. I feel a kinship with Detroit Lions fans, having been an Atlanta Falcon fan most of my life. I get it. And maybe a change of scenery can help. Speaking of trade ups, Falcons trade up to 3. Would they think about going best defensive player, Nick?
I don't think so. I don't think any of the defensive players in this class are, except maybe Jalen Carter, but there's questions now. But I don't think any of the defensive players warrant the no doubt trade up, especially for what it would cost. Moving all the way up to 3, that is a quarterback or don't make the move kind of thing. If you're moving up to 3, it's because a quarterback you liked fell there. And I'm curious to see what happens with the Cardinals now. Do we see a 49ers, a Dolphins kind of trade where the number 3 pick is moved before the draft? Or is it going to be, we like a guy, but we're not sure if they're going to be there, so we're going to wait until we see who's available on 3 to make the move? Sounds like right now, again, it's draft day rumors. This should take it with a grain of salt. Sounds like right now the favorite to move up to 3 is the Raiders. But we will see what happens come draft day.
Chris Walker says, I like Will Anderson and Nolan Smith, but their size worries me. I tell you what, Chris, I start getting Vic Beasley vibes when we start talking about those guys. They're almost identical in size. Vic was a combine monster. I just don't know if he had the bend, the flexibility that Will has. I think Will can dip his shoulder and get around the corner a little bit better. But I feel you on this one. I do.
They're both way more physical. Nolan Smith is like, you watch the body type and it's like, oh yeah, how can you do that? And you watch the reps against him handling a guy 70 pounds heavier than him, playing with force and power and leverage. And it's like, oh, that's weird. That's different.
I promise you're not going to be allowed to get away being soft for Kirby Smart.
Yeah, no, he is
not
also, he's a grade A character locker room guy. I mean, he didn't even play in the championship and stuff down the stretch. And he's one of the first people they interviewed, and he was up there and all the players are rushing to him. I mean, he was one of the heartbeats of that team the last 2 seasons. And Will Anderson, I mean, you talk about the run defense. What did he have like 2 years ago? His tackle for losses were like Derek Thomas-esque. It was unbelievable. It's not just the pass game, it's the run game too. So I don't see either of those guys being Vic Beasley, only in that they are smaller. But I mean, Von Miller is small, and he ended up becoming one of the best edge-setting run defenders in football because of his leverage, his mass times velocity, acceleration.
Velocity times mass equals momentum.
Yeah, the momentum that they play with, just because they're so twitchy, right? They're so
it's actually
explosive.
Squared. I think it's velo squared. So the faster is more important. Mass times velocity squared. Anyway.
So it's the velocity. Well, yeah, we're getting physics in here. Soon we'll talk about offensive linemen and how tall you are. But I think that both of those guys, they play with enough power and twitch and explosiveness that they can be still fine run defenders. Now, it's not Tyree Wilson as like a skyscraper, monster, almost Calais Campbell-esque kind of edge presence. But I think they're more than fine there.
CIA says, shout out to Scott Kennedy, the loyal Falcons fan. Oh, I don't know how loyal I am anymore. The NFL is more professional for me these days, and it has been for a long time. That my fandom got poured into international soccer. So I'm a loyal Chelsea fan, unapologetic fan. And it's tough right now. They stink.
Champions League, right?
But today is Champions League against Real Madrid, and you never know what can happen in a cup game. So I'm crazy enough to think they actually have a chance in this one. But he also shouts out his good friend Terry Miracle Sr. So thank you. Eric Tillery coming in says, morning, fellas. It's been a while. Well, welcome back. Terry's been cooking this offseason without a doubt. I was doom and gloom for trying to set everybody's expectations going into last season. I think I picked 2-15. They were 7-10. I think they wildly overachieved. The over-under on wins, I think, was 4.5. And 7-10, they had a system. They stuck to it. They stuck together. They played well, and their offensive line and a couple surprises on defense improved dramatically. I said, wait for this year. Wait for the offseason. When they ripped the Band-Aid off and were able to get out from under Julio Jones's contract, out from under Matt Ryan's contract, they were actually going to have some money. And they've learned how to scout because they've had to try and put a team on there with no money. Been fun. I think for me, I might be biased because I'm here all the time and I'm surrounded by it, but has there been a team that's been more active than the Atlanta Falcons this offseason?
Maybe the Denver Broncos. They spent the most money of anybody, guaranteed money up front, but I think by magnitudes actually. But the Falcons maybe by volume are up there.
But that's what I mean by active. I could have spent one $250 million guaranteed contract on Lamar Jackson. That didn't make me more active.
Yeah, Broncos brought in a lot. I don't know we'd have to go player by player, but I think they'd be probably number 2, if not right, pretty close to number 1.
Yeah, I mean, it kicked off trade Jonnu Smith, tight end. They went down to Tampa and got a receiver, Mac Hollins as a receiver. That's just on offense. Then you go David Onyemata, Caden Ellis, Calais Campbell, Jesse Bates, Mike Hughes, Jeff Okudah. It's the Falcons. That's 10 players right there that, frankly, and this is the warning sign I'll have when we get closer to it, is it is going to take a little bit of time for all these guys to come together. It's a lot of new faces, new defensive coordinator. It will take a little time. But all those guys I just mentioned, 7 of them are going to start. There's going to be a lot of new faces with the Atlanta Falcons. And we knew that. Every player they had on that team last year was either on a 1-year deal or a rookie contract. We knew that going in.
Yeah. Yeah, it'll be interesting with all the new faces, but I mean, they're going for it. This is a big year for Desmond Ridder. It's maybe a big year for Arthur Smith too. I mean, if they don't meet expectation after going for it, maybe he gets on the hot seat. Maybe something will happen there because the way this team is projecting right now. Zach Powers says Scott's reaction if the Falcons draft Jackson Smith and Jigba at 8. He's a fun player, one of the best slots. I saw a comment down here that Arthur Smith wouldn't take another wide receiver because of his target distribution. I think your target distribution depends greatly on who you have available at TQ.
Exactly.
At least if you're worth your salt as a play caller. So obviously things would change there. I don't think I would take Jackson Smith and Jigba at 8, but we talked about a trade down earlier where you move from 8 to 15. All right, well then let's reassess the board. If Jackson Smith and Jigba is your best player there, that makes some sense. But right now, we were talking about it earlier, Scott. You still think they'll take a defensive player? I agree with you. I think it's defensive line first, though. But after this move for Okudah and just how the board is shaking out and the depth of the cornerback group, I think offensive line might move into my number 2 spot on this. And I'm conglomerating edge and defensive tackle together because Jalen Carter's the standalone. But I think offensive line would move to number 2 jumping corner for me at 8.
Yeah, I can see if it's Jalen Carter, to plug into that spot. Other than that, at 8, is there anybody worth inside 300 pounds that I would want to take?
No, probably not.
Yeah, there's some guys that I'd be interested in. There's experience on the defensive. The defensive line all of a sudden got much better. Now they're kind of old. Grady's in his 30s. Calais Campbell's on a 1-year deal. David Onyemata is on the older side of things. Taquan Graham needs to get healthy. And then we need to start adding to that. Make You Fumble is here. Appreciate you being here. Make You Fumble. Or is it Make UF Humble? Could be a Florida Gator fan here. Roderick Cook says, just ruined my day being late. Not as mad as Scott without coffee. Roderick called me out on this yesterday, Nick. I told you I'd been cutting out caffeine. He called me out in a comment. He goes, that coffee must not have been strong enough. I'm like, dude, you don't know how right you are. This is water in here right now. I'm irritable as hell. He called me out on it. It was funny.
Well, you got to be real careful with what the Falcons do at 8 overall because it's precious draft capital. But yeah, no, Falcons.
I said yesterday in a tweet, I said, I just don't want to make sure we don't use precious draft capital on an off-ball linebacker so we don't ruin our simulated pressures. Could I sound any more pretentious? Let's see. Draft picks for an inside linebacker. All right, so did I say off-ball? Yeah, inside linebacker to fake blitzes. It's the same shite that people have been renaming stuff to sound like we're in the know, like we're part of the in crowd. It bothers me.
Take your simulated pressure stuff and take it up with Kirby Smart because he's the one who really.
I will. I might see Kirby here before too long.
Ask him about it. I'm curious.
I haven't talked to him in a long time. Once those guys, I knew those guys when they were like graduate assistants. Him and Mike Bobo were grad assistants at UGA when I was in the field. So I used to talk to them all the time. Once they hit the coordinator position, I didn't talk to them nearly as much.
Well, he has an amazing.
Says, how can you hate on Vic Beasley? Actually, I'll stick up for Vic Beasley most of the time, and he's just joking. He had 15 tackles and half a sack in the XFL. Yeah, but he had about 16 sacks in 2016. If Vic Beasley didn't turn into Lawrence Taylor for a month, the Falcons have no sniff at that Super Bowl because that defense wasn't any good. They were 25th and 27th in points allowed and yards. And then come last couple games and then come playoffs, all of a sudden they got hot. And Vic Beasley was a big reason why. So I can blame him for 28-3. No. And I forget which one it is. We're talking all this math. Mass times speed equals force. Could be. It's mass and acceleration or velo squared. There's a velocity squared in there somewhere. Mass times velocity squared equals that might be force. So we'll have to do our physics lesson here. Let me see here. I said we would want to go. Good morning, Jamal. Appreciate you being here as well. He's coming in on YouTube. And 10 Cam, that feels like a newer name. So welcome in. He says we do need a good pass blocker. Yeah, you worry about, Caleb McGarry improved, but still isn't great. His bread and butter is still going to be running the ball. And left guard is still a big concern. Left guard is still a big concern for me. You want to rip through a 31 first rounder real quick? Does that sound okay with everybody in the chat?
Yeah, that sounds great. And we're talking Newton's second law here. Force equals mass times acceleration. We were getting our kinetic energy mixed up there with the mass time, half of mass velocity squared. But that doesn't regard.
I'm just thinking. I remember thinking of it. Jack Reacher is now even more famous because of the Amazon Prime series, but he puts it in there when he's talking about hitting somebody. He's like, people forget it's the speed that gets squared. It's the velocity that gets squared when you hit them with this, not the mass. So hitting them faster punches. And Kevin says, I have to say, though, all the 2-win talk of the Falcons last season, absolutely nobody took me up on the bet when I said I'd take the over. I probably would have taken the over, too. What I said was they probably won't be favored in more than 2 games, and I'm not sure they were.
I'm not sure they were.
And it was just trash talk from other teams' fan. No one actually believed they'd only win 2 games when it came to pony up their cash. I probably would have said 4. I would have said it the over-under around 4. But going in, I said, looking at it right now, and I don't think they ended up favored by more than those. I said they probably won't be favored by more than 2 games. And it was the Bears at home, and then maybe you're looking at a split with the Panthers on those guys. But let's have some fun. Let me I've got this actually queued up here, and we've got to do this fast. That's okay. We can speed draft. And we're going to take everybody. Let me share my screen here real quick. We're not going to be able to do we're just going to do the first round on this one. Or should we do a Falcons one?
I say we do a Falcons one and save the first round one for next week because
I agree. Let's do a Falcons 7-rounder just to see. We'll talk more about who we're going to be. And 10 Cam followed up. They were all close games except the Bengals. Yeah, and even then they stuck to the running game. In the first half and made it a game. It's just their defense couldn't keep up. And like I've said, I think people that want to, blame Arthur Smith for, losing these games, I thought Arthur Smith did a fantastic job the last 2 seasons. I really do. Now expectations are going to be different. You got a scrappy bunch of cast-offs to play at a competent level. Well, now you got to win. Expectations are different. Now it's going to be 9 wins at the least, or there's going to be some grumbling with the investment that's been made. That's a different podcast. We'll do that maybe after the draft. Let me share this screen and we'll run through a 7-round Falcons mock real quick. We'll crank up the randomness, draft for need just down a little bit, positional value up some. Leave that there. And we'll hit turbo. We'll hit enter draft. Let me knock that down to 125. I think we can still see that one okay. Well, let's hit that start the draft, see what happens here. Bryce Young, CJ Stroud, Will Anderson, Anthony Richardson, Jalen Carter, Tyree Wilson, Will Levis. That's not completely out of the question, Nick. And the problem with that one is if that's how it falls, of those 4 position players that I said would, one of them would be available. One of them is, and it's Christian Gonzalez, where I don't necessarily need the corner anymore. I think Smith is too high. Jackson Smith and Jigba, I think, is too high at 8. And this is a scenario where I'm talking about where you go, do you go your left guard, my plug and play left guard? This is a scenario where you could take a corner again for the reasons I said at the top of the show. You've really only got one long-term answer at corner. If you're convinced that Christian Gonzalez is the guy, is a long-term all Pro Bowl type of guy, you can go Christian Gonzalez with this pick. You can.
This is one where I'm hoping I get a trade back.
Yeah,
I would like to move back 4 spots.
Says. Skoronski should be here or trade back. We're not going to trade back, but I agree with you. The edge that I want would probably be, and I've advocated for this, I might go Lucas Van Ness. If I'm not allowed to trade back, I might go Lucas Van Ness with this pick or Peter Skoronski.
Yeah, I think Nolan Smith still needs to be discussed here as well as an option. I know he's a little bit lower on this board, but I think in reality, he's somebody that could go in this range, especially with how this board played out. But you mentioned a you can mention Paris Johnson Jr. You can talk about any of those cornerbacks. You can talk about those edge rushers. You talk about Peter Skoronski. This to me screams back. Can I trade back from 8 to 12 to 16 and see who's still there and pick up extra capital? That's what I would be trying to do really hard. If it was possible, somebody like, I know the Jets are like dying to move up. Maybe the Patriots as well. Both those teams want to come up and get a offensive tackle. It sounds like they're both pretty damn desperate to move up for a tackle. So I'd be curious to see if you could move down to 13 or 14 and then reevaluate the board, because, I mean, Devon Witherspoon, you could take a cornerback still there. That's when we're talking Jackson Smith and Jigba. Could be even talking, Bijan Robinson there. But with
the Athletic said the Jets.
Yes.
The Athletic said the Jets, and they said a 2024 third. Forget that. But let's try it. I usually say no trade just because it takes some time. But we're what? 50 minutes in, we can blow through the rest of this. We can maybe make a trade. New York Jets, we want 13. I want a second. They are not interested in trading for this pick.
Not for the 42, but maybe the 2024 second.
They're not interested in trading for this pick, period. It didn't even light up.
Well, we can just take Peter Skoronski, or we can force the trade. I think the Jets would be interested in this in reality, but it's fine. But I think in this one,
I think Peter Skoronski would. I would probably come out of this with Lucas Van Ness, to be honest with you.
I wouldn't be against it. If you want to go Lucas Van Ness, that's fine. I don't think we've ever taken Peter Skoronski here before, and I want to see what the board looks like for the second round edges. Yeah. Just for how that plays out.
But it becomes also real interesting based on what I could then do with my salary cap availability, based on the money that comes off the board for Jake Matthews next year.
Yes.
And then I've got my answer at left guard. Scott, what'd you say? What's your big question on this team right now? The big question is left guard and wide receiver too, probably.
And also, I mean, you mentioned he played better last season. I agree. But I think that Peter Skoronski could also play center. Drew Dahlman, he's been fine there, but you could have Peter Skoronski might be the best center in this class. And then you have another avenue. I mean, he's legitimately a 5-position player.
I want, and Millie Mills says, Miles Murphy, and Aaron Kearney saying Nolan, I'd take Nolan over Van Ness. For me, Aaron, it's just the size thing right now. It's just such a difference to have that 280-pound athlete over there to seal the edge is something that the Falcons just have not had in a long, long time. But Dahlman turned a corner and played serviceable. He was he was an average NFL player, which was a huge step up. But Can you do better? Do I want to push him? Yes, I do. Do I want to make sure I've got my left guard? Yes, I do. Peter Skoronski. And I've got tackle stuff. Nick, you're on the sun again.
Oh, why does it do that?
Tackle here. So I'll go Skoronski. I can live with that.
I think it's when I take a coffee sip and it like realizes that I'm close, and then it flips me. It knows that it's brightening me up when I'm having some coffee brought to you by a Lion Coffee Company.
Oh, good Lord. There's DeJuan Jones there naturally. After you take a tackle, after you take an offensive lineman, there's DeJuan Jones.
He's pure right tackle, though. There's no way in hell he's playing guard at 6'20" or whatever he is.
I'm not taking him that early. I might go corner here, and I just took my guard because that's one of the reasons why, is because I might target Steve Avila. I take him there. I swear I take Tyree Wilson and Steve Avila when I do these on my own every single time.
Yeah. Well, for me, I mean, you got Tuli Tuipulotu, who's a really good edge rusher, dropped weight. He's a big size. He's different than what you have right now. He interests me a heck of a lot if you were building that team. Julius Brents is there as well. And honestly, another spot that's really standing out for me here, given it's the Arthur Smith offense, you have two awesome tight end options.
I know. Luke Musgrave is such a beast.
I mean, you pair him with, if you want to be a 12 personnel heavy team, you pair him with Kyle Pitts. I know you just traded for Jonnu Smith, but you give up a 7th round pick. He's kind of, I wouldn't put too much stock in having him there. So really the guy who brings, I think, a lot of value here for me, in my opinion, is I think Luke Musgrave might be the top one. But I also really like Tuipulotu.
Yeah, golly, how do I come out of this without an edge? I mean, you don't want to reach. If I really like the guy and it's even close, I got to come out of this with an edge. I mean,
take good players. You're never getting mad about taking good players.
That's what I'm asking is, is he good? Or did I
like
miss
him a
out
lot.
on DJ Ojulari by 1 pick?
Yeah, that's really frustrating.
Am I pissed that I didn't get Tyree Wilson or Willie Anderson in the first? I don't want to overcorrect here, but
Let's scroll down a little bit just to see if there's anybody else that really stands out.
I like Julius Brents a lot at corner. No, edge, no, God, no. There's not going to be an edge.
I like Thule a good bit. I think he's a fine player. I don't know if he is a 40th overall kind of guy, but
Luke Musgrave's a beast. He is. Joe Cannon asks, where is Keon White? He may have gone already. Where is Keon White? That's a good question.
He's probably a little bit lower. I mean, honestly,
he had to. Oh, there he is. He's all the way down at 120.
Did Will McDonald come off the board? He must have. I mean,
yeah, he
or
must
is he a
have.
linebacker?
Will McDonald, 31 of the Chiefs.
Will McDonald coming off the board is a disappointment. Adi coming off the board there is a disappointment as well.
Yeah, See, there's the other guy too, right there that we really like. Keely Ringo was mocked to the Falcons by Mel Kiper Jr. this week.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense. Waiting until round 2. So yeah, the edges kind of game. This is why you play with it, and this is another reason why I'd want to trade back from that spot to reevaluate that board, because then you might have the capital to move up for a guy.
You know what?
I'm leaning Luke Musgrave. Honestly,
I'm okay with Luke Musgrave too. It frees up Kyle Pitts. Get some of the dirty work. He is a big dude. He is a blocker. I'm okay with that. I would either go him. Or for what I know about the guys out there, I'd go Julius Brents next at corner. But I'm okay with Luke Musgrave here. We're gonna get. I'm not. And Millie Mills, Andre Carter is a 6th or 7th round guy. Honestly, I think he was like top 20 when this board started. Then he went to the Senior Bowl and was just exposed. He was one of those guys. Every once in a while, you get a guy that gets there, and you just say, okay, he doesn't belong. He really, really struggled. I wouldn't take Andre Carter before pick 224 of these guys that are out here.
And we have Yaya Diaby in our back pocket.
And he's so underrated. I can get Yaya Diaby later.
Yep. So right now, it's really unfortunate that 3 wide receivers went off the board. The 3 picks before you here. 4. God, that's really annoying. Broncos go Keon White.
But I'm still sitting on Jonathan Mingo.
Oh, Mingo as well. God, yeah, he'd be a great one. Yeah, so let's keep scrolling here. You got Derek Hall is still available. He's a good edge rusher. Clark Phillips is a fun player as well, from Utah. Talking about down here.
If I could get Derek Hall and then get Jonathan Mingo next.
Let's scroll down a little bit. Just keep seeing if there's a little bit of a discrepancy in some of these board and players here. I really like. Oh, there's Darius Rush. Let's take Darius Rush, man. You talk about.
Oh yeah, I can do that. Yeah, Darius Rush. We talked about him in the second. So I got my corner. There he is. Darius Rush. And now I'm looking for Mingo.
Or Yaya.
Wide receiver. Trey Palmer. I'm taking Mingo here. Mingo, y'all, I wrote it as the headline. This is a replacement for Cordero Patterson. He's 6'2", 225 pounds, runs in the 4.4s, and has legs like a linebacker with sticky hands. I'll show you some video of him again here.
Wait a second. There's 1, 2, 3, 4.
We go 110 and 113, so we can go twice.
But I'm curious if Yaya would be a better pick here for safety reasons, like if the edges evaporate before. I like 3 of those.
We go 110 and 113.
I understand, but like if there's if Yaya's the next edge, you probably want to take him before you go.
I think he's in the 140s too.
Carl Brooks is
way down here.
Okay, yeah, we're playing the game here. Okay, we can go Mingo. We're gonna
manipulate the board.
We're playing the hits, baby. You've been talking about him a lot too.
Like Jonathan Mingo is a beast, and he's going to go in the second round.
Yeah. We've been playing the hits here, but you mentioned Mingo. What about Carl Brooks? You keep talking about him as somebody who impressed you a lot on the inside, versatile inside-outside pass rusher.
I do like Carl Brooks on the DL. Did we take our edge, or were we counting on
Yaya Diaby
as our edge?
We're still waiting.
Now, then...
we can go Yaya. He's probably a better player than Carl Brooks in my book.
Yeah, Yaya Diaby is a 4'5", 265-pound guy.
Yeah. You're going to have to scroll away because they, for some reason, don't like him.
We'll have to do this like, I don't know. This is how I would actually want them to go.
Yeah. We're taking
This is our draft, not PFF's.
Yeah. Big, huge gap here between these picks. Goodness.
And well, especially after you just traded your 5th. CJ says, y'all sleeping on the sack leader big time. Which one? There's a lot of guys out there.
I don't even know who led the NCAA in sacks last season.
Yeah, I don't know if you were talking about the Falcons sack leader. That's Grady Jarrett. So not sure who you meant on that, CJ. Help us out there.
Oh, he's talking about Nick Herbig, I believe, from Wisconsin. I mean, he's just so small that he might have to transition to the off-ball spot in base downs, and then move outside.
Yeah, you call him inside. He just move inside.
Yeah, he's let's see what we have here for his size. He's only 6'2", and he is 240 pounds. I mean, that's more, inside linebacker size. And also, I think he had like 3 or 4 of his sacks against Iowa, whose right tackle couldn't block the sun from his eyes. He's talking about taking a
tight end over Thule at USC.
I like Thule Tuipulotu too. If you'd have gone with him,
I don't know him as well. So that was, again, knowing Arthur Smith and knowing this offense. And then let me bring up. I do know it takes a second. I've got this on an internal hard drive. It takes a second to spin up. Senior Bowl 23 cuts. Luke Musgrave. Let me bring up his highlights here real quick. I do know this guy very well. And this is a call out. You just see the size of him with the catch radius, getting it down, knowing that I could free up Kyle Pitts and let him just, it's like asking Dominique Wilkins to play defense. Forget Dominique. You don't need to play defense. Just go score. This guy's always open. He's 6'6", 250-plus pounds, running in the 4.6s, huge catch radius. That if we're talking best available player at that time, I think this guy rings the bell of who was the best available player at the time that we picked in that spot. A couple of the guys I really would have rather have had, I probably would have taken Bizier Ojulari, Ade. But Luke Musgrave is a beast. He really is. How many freaking tight ends do you need? Well, maybe one more. You got Jonnu Smith. You got Kyle Pitts, who's, when he hits arbitration or, when he's negotiating a contract or you try and franchise tag him, he's going to want to be a wide receiver. This is a pure tight end. And this a team that runs a lot of 2 tight end offenses, and I really like him. I just thought he was the best available of the guys I knew. And like I said, I just don't know. I don't know the kid from USC nearly as well.
He's worth watching. He's weird because he played at listed 290 at USC and then dropped down to about 265, 270. So we'll see what he actually looks like at that weight. But talking about Luke Musgrave, the Falcons played the second highest rate of 12 personnel of any team in the NFL last season, only behind the Baltimore Ravens. So it's kind of, I wouldn't say an exotic defense, but one that is different, a change up to a lot of teams. So you bring in another guy like that, which I don't think is a bad decision at all. And then you also are bringing in somebody that could maybe free up Pitts to play a little bit more X. You want to talk about who's the best wide receiver 2 out there? Well, Kyle Pitts had some snaps where he's been lining up, boundary out wide, taking on some stuff. He's the athlete.
For sure.
So now you have an option there where you can, play matchup football in the pass game as well and free up the likes of Kyle Pitts and just add another weapon in there. So, yeah, I like it a lot.
They gave us 3 picks here. I'm going to take Lonnie Phelps, another edge, kind of a speed guy. He was a Senior Bowl guy. And then I'll let you have the last one. I also am going to take, who did I see down here? It was DJ Dale, 300-pounder. Taking a flyer on him also. DJ Dale, give me some 300 pounds. And then you can have the last one on here.
You upset me because the guy that was I think the obvious pick was Trice. But that's okay. He's gone now. He's 6'3" and a tested awesome. He's probably going to go top 120. And the fact that he's falling to this year.
We're just running short on time here.
Yeah. I would have taken Trice here. So now the question becomes a lot more difficult for me.
No, it doesn't, because this is pick 245. This is easy.
Yeah, but I'm going to be honest with you. I only recognize like half the names in here, and I like to have a educated decision. Can we see what the running backs are? Can you just pull up? We haven't taken a running back yet, but let's add some fuel to the fire here. Mims, Cameron Peoples. God, even the running back choices here are not great. Wide receiver. Have we taken a wide receiver yet? I don't think we have.
We took Mingo.
Oh, we took Mingo.
I took Mingo. Yeah.
Travis. Oh, you have running backs in there as well. I'm like, why is Travis Dye listed here as somebody? Tyson Bagent, Max Dugan. Yeah, heck yeah, that's really fun. Heisman runner-up. Let's go back to the overall board. And I was looking at the San Diego State defensive tackle, Tavai, I believe the name. He's the top one on the board there, but he's he's probably a practice squad guy early on, but he can do some stuff up front. I've caught a few of his games this season. San Diego State, they have a defensive tackle who I think is really talented, a wide receiver who's talented as well. But he's one who stands out to me here for an option. You could draft him, probably a day one practice squad player, but somebody who you could have some fun with.
And CJ comes in and says, guess y'all are comfortable with Lorenzo Walker starting, at will at one of the edge spots. I'm actually, no. That's the left guard and the one of the edge spots is where I'm the least comfortable, honestly, that are out there. It's just the board didn't fall the way I did, and like I said, I went through and explained if the USC edge was really good and that was the guy, I'd be perfectly comfortable taking that one. But I don't know him nearly as well, so I couldn't go out there and this is great. What I do know is Luke Musgrave is a beast, so maybe it may not be a perfect mock. But if I came out of here, I'd say, okay, why didn't you get edge in those first two picks? That's because the worst thing you can do is force a pick for a need. That's how you end up missing. I don't want to reach. If you reach for a need, you end up missing. It's not the guys you get. It's not the guys you miss that hurt you. It's the guys that you take that can't play that hurt you. If I get a good player, I'll be all right. So that was my That was my thinking on that one. Luke,
and this is also an exercise.
Really good.
This is an exercise too. Teams do this all the time where they'll run simulators and be like, okay, what does it look like if we don't take an edge with that 8th pick? How does that fall then? So the Diaz coming in saying all quarterbacks on the board, doubt we can trade back. I think you can trade back still for somebody coming up for a cornerback, edge rusher, and offensive tackle. Maybe even the only wide receiver they value on the board in Jackson Smith and Jigba that high. But you're probably not going to get. I think that the pick that the Athletic offered is probably not totally realistic, but I think closer than what you're going to see because the trade for a quarterback is completely different for other positions.
Yeah, but a 2024 third, I'm not coming back from that spot. I'm not trading back 5 spots for a 2024 third and out of the top 10. No way.
It might be something where like you get a 2024 second and you're sending them a 2024 fourth, which there's still more. That's a lot of value. I mean, that could be 33 overall. That's a valuable pick.
Yeah.
Still where you do that and maybe then, get a 5th rounder or something. I mean, we have that huge gap here between the 4th and 7th round. Maybe you're looking to add a 5th or 6th back to this just because the board falls and you're looking for a certain player. But overall, fun one. I know that again, we didn't take edge here, but you took 2 good players. Also, this one sets up talk about setting up Desmond Ridder for a no excuse situation. Offensive line is completely solidified. You added another 2 pass catchers that are really fun weapons. And then we went edge, defensive line at the end just to, throw resources at the position. I love that we doubled up day 3 as well, because odds are somebody on this unit is going to hit. So that means that you have if you walk out with 1 plus player out of those last 4 picks, that is a great usage of day 3 capital.
Yeah, I again, there's some players in here. Darius Rush could come in and play right away. Jonathan Mingo, Musgrave, Skronsky, and then if you get Diaby and Phelps going there and contributing, you're doing pretty good. There's going to be, don't let this is a weak draft. No, it's not. Look at some of the players that we're able to get in the 100s that can come in and help this team. Albert Knoppers, good morning, y'all. And closing us out today, open us up, Michael closing us out. Great show today, Scott and Nick on the Falcons podcast. Michael, thank you so much, dude. Michael came in with our 2 super chats today. Thank you so much. Be like Mike. Any final thoughts before we get out of here? Nick and I will be back tomorrow morning on Broncos for breakfast. But until then, what do you think? How are you feeling about this Falcons team right now?
I think they are extremely intriguing, but all the eggs are in the Desmond Ridder basket. And I keep coming back to, if you love one of the quarterbacks in this class, you should be at least pursuing the avenues where you can move up for him, because I think the way the team is set up right now, this is as high as you're going to be picking the next 3 years. And a bet on Desmond Ridder this season might be a bet on Desmond Ridder for the next 3 years because of your situation.
We'll see. Taylor Heineke isn't a bad player in the system either. If Ridder goes out and flounders, but again, like you're saying, this could be the last chance you have to get a top 10 type of quarterback fairly cheap, without having to spend a whole lot extra to do it.
Yeah.
So worth a thought. We will see. We'll see what they feel. There's 2 weeks left, 2 weeks and change left until the draft.
15 days, I think.
Yeah. So it should be a lot of fun. Michael, thank you so much. Benefactor for us today. Keeping the lights on, keeping my forehead nice and shiny. We will be back on the show Monday at 9 a.m. We're here live Monday and Wednesdays. And then Nick and I will be at Mile High Huddle on YouTube on Thursday morning. So if you want to talk some more football with us, you can join us over there tomorrow at 9:30 Eastern. Otherwise, we'll see you guys again on Monday. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Some new faces, some old heads come in. Good to see you back. Welcome to be here. Hit that subscribe button and that like button. Make sure you get the notifications. We'd love to see you again. Great chat today, y'all. This is why we do this live. Very educated group of fans and contributors that we like to talk with. It keeps us on our toes for sure too. So thanks for being here, everybody. Michael Ranchio, thank you so much. And we'll see you next time.
Have a great one.